Welcome back on this Monday night. As you saw earlier, Canada's provincial and territorial leaders are meeting in Ontario to talk about removing trade barriers in this country. They'll also be discussing the state of the trade war with the United States. Gavin Fridell is a political scientist at St. Mary's University who studies development and trade. Good of you to join us tonight, Gavin.
Thanks for having me.
Look, a lot of the talk is about removing those provincial trade barriers. We know Nova Scotia is certainly bullish on that. A couple of deals have been signed, one-on-one, but should we expect anything larger or anything concrete to come out of this meeting?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's interesting to start with that issue, because that's one issue that a lot of the provinces agree on. So I think that the more tense moments will be the issues either that they don't agree on, or the ones we don't know. And I have to say, when I imagine Carney tonight, I don't know if he himself knows what he can really fill the premiers in about tomorrow of anything concrete when it comes to the Trump administration and tariffs. And I suspect what will emerge on the table will be some of the issues that the provinces are fighting over. And I think the big one for them will be, one of the big ones will be whether or not there's going to be retaliatory tariffs against the U.S. if there's no deal for August 1st.
Okay, let's look at that, because that's we hear a lot about United Canada and Team Canada, but on that issue, retaliatory measures, they're certainly split, right? We know Saskatchewan and Alberta have been very vocal in that they don't think they should be implemented. Ontario, Quebec, we know, are rather bullish on them.
Yeah, and that divide really is one that goes to the core of some of their core industries. So Ontario in particular, they're the province that's getting hit the hardest by the steel tariffs, by the auto tariffs. And for that reason, Doug Ford is really big on retaliatory tariffs. If you go to the west, Alberta and Saskatchewan, what they don't want is any more tariffs on oil and gas or on potash exports. So they don't want to encourage the U.S. administration to ramp up tariffs, whereas Doug Ford wants more aggressive retaliatory tariffs if there's not a deal. And then, of course, Quebec also has its interests, and they're particularly concerned about the dairy dispute and the tariff rate quota there. And those quotas help our dairy industry in Canada for sure. But they also disproportionately help farmers in Quebec and Ontario, where 70% of the country's dairy farmers are. So there's a real west-east divide on how to deal with these tariffs that I think aren't going to go away, and the hope is that they don't erupt too much tomorrow.
We've heard Prime Minister say, sort of telegraph, expect that there's going to be some kind of tariffs on Canada, even at the end of this negotiation period. We're supposed to hear a deal by August 1st, but he maintains something will be coming in terms of tariffs from the U.S. The premiers in their meetings today, or going into their meetings, seem to be resigned to that. They seem to be echoing the same thing. Expect some kind of tariffs. Do you think we'll still be at 35%, or is it?
You know what? It's such an unpredictable trade and tariff world these days that I have no idea if we'll be at 35%, at 25%, or 45% by the end of the month. But I will say there's a couple things to keep in mind. Is aside from, say, steel and autos and a few other industries, Canada's actually doing okay compared to many other nations in the world, precisely because of the North American Trade Agreement, because most of our products are excluded because of that agreement, just not steel, and to a lesser extent auto and aluminum and some other industries. So I think that's one thing. And the other thing to keep in mind is that Trump has made pretty clear that he wants uneven trade deals. So if you look at the one he signed with Vietnam, the one he signed with the UK, there's basically uneven. And I think the message he's sending to other countries is that the only deals he will accept is one that's uneven. Vietnam had to accept a 20% tariff. He's also kind of made it clear that one's not sure if the U.S. will be good on their word for a deal. So that's also a concern. You don't want to give up too much if you're not sure the strength of the deal. And I think he's also made it clear he wants countries to limit their trade with China. And that's tricky, because China's the world's largest trading nation right now. 70% of the countries in this world trade more with China than they do with the U.S. So if you want Canada and Mexico to not trade as much with China, it might make sense if you have a strong partnership with the U.S.
Okay.
But if you don't, things become pretty dicey.
It would be nice to think that, let's say August 1st, whatever the deal is, if there's a deal, and that's what we live with. But we're going to be back into this, what, in a year's time when NAFTA or CUSMA or the USMCA, whatever you want to call it, gets renegotiated. And that's where the majority of our trade lives with the U.S. Is that fair?
Yes, that will be renegotiated, and it depends on how much companies are working to get their paperwork done. But when they do, now some people are saying 95% of the goods crossing the border between Canada and the U.S. are actually covered by that agreement, meaning mostly zero tariffs, except, again, for steel and aluminum and partially for autos. So, yes, now we're going to have to do that again in the year. There's going to be a lot of trade going on and trade debates going on in this world for the foreseeable future. And I think what you want to hope is for August 1st, we'll have something stable and clear. You want to hope. And even if it's uneven, I would say, the message is still clear that the Canadian government has to diversify our trade relations, and it has to do it in a way that goes beyond what we've been saying for the last 70 years, which is always talking about doing it, but there's no countries in the world except Canada and Mexico as dependent on the U.S. as we are. We need a more diversified trade profile.
We keep talking about August 1st as a deadline. Is there such a thing as a real deadline? How many of we have already seen moved back? So how much faith do you put in August 1st?
I think that's a very good point. I mean, it's August 1st now. It'll be August 10th for all we know. It's a constantly shifting and changing process. I would say that I think the U.S. on some level wants to get some deals done in the next month or two. But to say that does not, I think, give us the kind of precision we might like in terms of the predictability of what these deadlines do and don't mean from one week and from one day to the next. And outside of trade, we also don't know what will happen over the next 2 weeks in the politics we're now living under, and that also impacts trade negotiations. So I think I mentioned earlier, as a political scientist following trade for almost 20 years, I've never seen such an unpredictable situation.
That's a very good point, that politics being politics will have the power to upend whatever they're perhaps talking about and move it even further back. Gavin Fridell, St. Mary's University, good of you to take some time for us, so we appreciate your insight.
Thanks for having me.
We'll take a time out. There's plenty of your local news on the other side. Stay with us.